Welcome to this week's episode of The Truth. I'm John Gordon, coming to you from West Palm Beach, Florida, on a hot, muggy day with a little bit of ocean breeze. Well, I believe that I was the first person that speculated that the Air India air disaster, that we could not rule out the possibility of sabotage. I hadn't heard anybody else mention the word sabotage or terrorism, but I've as many of our listeners know, I've been a pilot for over 60 years. I know aviation pretty well, and when I considered all of the possibilities, I really could not come up with a good mechanical reason why the plane would fall out of the air. But it was clearly, by the time we got 24 hours of information back, it was pretty clearly a mechanical issue. We knew that because of the rat. That's what's known as what they refer to as the ram air turbine. Now, this is a little propeller that will deploy down out of the airplane if there is a mechanical problem. And the rat is designed to keep electricity flowing and hydraulic fluid flowing in the case of an emergency, and it will self-deploy. You don't have to deploy the rat. It deploys on its own in the event of a bona fide emergency. And a lot of witnesses said there was actually only one survivor. But the witnesses reported hearing a low humming noise, and then video footage when they were able to focus in on the rat, where the rat is located, the ram air turbine. We were able to see it. So we knew something had caused the rat to deploy. Well, we now know, after several weeks of investigation by not only the Indian government, but also our own National Transportation Safety Board and Federal Aviation Administration accident investigators, that there was something horrible that occurred. Inexplicably, at about 600 plus feet, the engines stopped running. The air data recorder showed that both fuel switches were moved from the on position to the off position. That required an intentional act. When the engines almost immediately stopped running, the first officer turned to the captain and said, "Why did you turn off the fuel switches?" He said, "I didn't." The first officer, and in a very calm, stoic voice, the first officer frantically turned them back on, but it was just simply too late. And now we know that 241 people died in the air and 19 people on the ground. It is a disaster of epic proportion that could have been avoided altogether were it not for someone who obviously was going through a serious emotional and mental breakdown. We don't know much about the background of the captain. So just to be clear, the first officer, as is standard, one pilot, each pilot, captain and first officer, they take turns flying the airplane. So if I don't know whether they flip a coin or whether the captain decides, but however that decision is made, the first officer was actually flying the airplane, and the captain was delegated to watch the instruments, look for anything that was out of the ordinary, and handle the radio communications. That's basically what the second pilot, whether the captain or first officer, would do. The captain always sits in the left seat, the first officer in the right. So he would have been flying from the right seat. He detected wouldn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that the engine stopped running. The airplane lost thrust. It started to descend. The first officer looked and saw the fuel switches were off and said, "Why did you shut off the fuel switches?" And the captain said, "I didn't." So it's really hard to contemplate this and think about all the suffering, the loss of life. And I feel sorry for the survivor, frankly. I mean, he was interviewed and said that he saw death everywhere around him. Those are images that he will carry for the rest of his life. If he had his druthers, maybe he would have rather have perished in the crash himself. I don't know. But I can only imagine, you talk about PTSD, this would be a horrific experience to have to carry with you for the rest of your life. And I estimate that he is in his mid to late 30s in the videos that I've seen with him. So it is a shame. I did call it here. I said you couldn't rule out sabotage, and that's what I was leaning towards. I take no joy in that because the disaster is just overwhelming. Our thoughts and prayers for those who perished, both on the plane and on the ground, as well as the families that they have left behind, and just the untold grief that has been left in the wake. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have also been talking to you for the better part. Gasoline prices have fallen. They're averaging $3 across the country, except $4.49 a gallon in California. Serves you right, you leftist communist. Tariffs brought in $100 billion in the first quarter with no impact to inflation. Markets are also on a tear. All three indices, the Dow, the NASDAQ, the 500 index, they are all setting new records virtually on a daily basis. The Dow is at 44,342 as of Friday's close. And when Trump took office, let's just go look. Back in November, it was at 44,900. And so it's actually had a bit of a sell-off since his administration has been back. But that does not tell the whole story. He has had a lot of challenges getting the big, beautiful bill passed and getting these trade deals negotiated. And the last remaining, well, there are two remaining things that need to happen to really get this economy set on fire in a good way. One, Jerome Powell needs to come to the table. Now, this week, Jerome Powell was being criticized for budget overruns at the central bank in the remodel. It cost about $1 billion to remodel the headquarters of the Federal Reserve Bank. And now President Trump is blaming Jerome Powell for those cost overruns. I mean, he's just leveraging, and whether he is going to take it to a next step is anyone's guess. But we are now at a point where Powell has got to loosen credit to save, not to save our economy, but to help our economy. And if we could get interest rate relief, I think the markets will go crazy. And Art Laffer, who is an economist, has been on the national stage, since he worked in Reagan's administration, said he predicts a 3% growth in the U.S.'s GDP this year. So if that happens in the second half, you could annualize that and say we're growing at 6% a year in the GDP, which would be historical. And by the way, $2 trillion of new investment has already come into the country through the promises that have been made, totaling now $12 to $15 trillion. This is unbelievable. And I do believe our economy is just going to be insanely successful as long as there is not something that will get it off the rails, like another pandemic or like a major conflict. If we were to get into a conflict with Russia, that would certainly hinder our economy a lot. I'm not predicting that's going to happen. I seriously doubt that is going to happen, but clearly Trump and Putin are now at odds with one another. And Putin has continued to fire into the Ukraine. Trump and the EU have sent new arms to the Ukraine to defend itself. And so that war continues to rage on. And now President Trump has set a deadline for Putin to come to the table, or else. That or else is severe trade barriers and economic punishment, particularly with the sale of its oil. Basically, President Trump will just say, look, anybody who buys petroleum from the Soviet Union, from Russia, I stand corrected, Soviet Union was destroyed by Reagan and split into a whole bunch of different countries. So I meant to say Russia, as I think you know. But he'll just say, look, if you're going to buy oil from Russia, we're not going to trade with you, period, paragraph. No further discussion. So sanctions are very much on the table, and it is likely, I think, that we'll end up there. Well, Epstein is the story that just will not go away. Epstein lives on in infamy. Is that how do you say that? Infamy. Say it again. Infamy. That's what I was trying to say. This guy and his persona just will not die, and Trump doesn't like that.
Why won't you die?
Now, our radio listeners won't catch the significance of that like our live stream viewers will, but that was a clip from a movie, a horror film, and that's what Epstein has become for the Trump administration. He, of all the problems that Trump has in his administration, and fighting with Elon Musk, fighting with Putin, fighting with whoever, Epstein is just the one person that he can't fight. And his attempts to say, let's move on, have not worked to his advantage of all. And I've got some hunches why that is true. You remember we played it last week. I think it bears repeating this week. Here's Pam Bondi. Look at her, for those of you on the live stream, and you can watch us on Getter, Rumble, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, X. Come on over and watch our live stream. And while you're there, if you'll do me a teensy-weensy little favor, I'd be so happy. Just subscribe and like us if you do. And we're trying to build our channel, and it is growing very rapidly. I'm type A, impatient, not fast enough. But you can help. You can help nurture my impatientness just by going to one of those channels, looking for John Gordon Truth, and subscribing. It doesn't cost anything. And we won't bother you. We won't put you on a mailing list. But if you want to be on our mailing list, you can email me at johngordontruth@gmail.com and say you'd like to be on our weekly mailing list, and we'll put you on there. And we let you know who's coming on our next shows and what you can expect. And of course, I'm always happy to hear from any of our listeners and viewers. Email me, johngordontruth@gmail.com. All right, so here was what I consider to be a very uncomfortable and nervous Pam Bondi. And again, for those watching the live stream, watch Trump's reaction. I think it tells all.
and the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
What a crock. She doesn't look like she believes it. And Trump looked there for a second. He kind of let his guard down, and he looked like he was really frustrated with the way that she was going through this. I mean, she just was stumbling through her explanation that no one is buying. Hello? All right, well, someone who's not buying it is a guy that I watch every week. His name is Zach DiGregorio. I've tried to get him to come on The Truth, and I can't get him to. He's always too busy. So he does. I don't know why. I'd love to interview him. But he has a channel called Wolves in Finance. And I thought Zach just absolutely nailed it last weekend. Here's what he had to say.
If we look at the video, something strange happens around 10:40 p.m. At 10:38 and 50 seconds, one of the guards gets up from their desk and walks over into the blind spot. Then shortly after, at 10:39 and 45 seconds, if you look closely, you can see a few pixels of an orange jumpsuit of someone walking up the stairs towards Jeffrey Epstein's cell. Can you see it? Now, just to be clear, prisoners are usually locked in their cell at night. They don't just let prisoners walk around the cell block at 10:40 p.m. So who was that person walking up the stairs to Jeffrey Epstein's cell? I'm not making it up that someone went up the stairs.
It's very visible. And so when Pam Bondi tells us that it is conclusive and irrefutable, that's just a bunch of baloney. And I like Pam Bondi. Shame on you for trying to sell us a bill of goods that now we can see with our own two eyes that you have not told us the truth. Because it sure as hell is not conclusive. Who was in the orange jumpsuit at 10:40 in the night, which was exactly when we were told that Epstein's cell was locked and he was put away for the night? Something ain't right. And I'll tell you, Judge Napoliano, he didn't think something's right either. Here's what he has to say about it.
I think Trump's name is on the list. I think Mossad knows it. I think Mossad told their American stenographer, who happens to be the director of the CIA, who takes down and regurgitates everything Mossad told him. And I think that stenographer whispered it into the president's ear. And he's terrified that this will come out because he knows it will be the beginning of the end, whether there's a Republican Congress or a Democrat Congress. That's what I honestly believe has happened.
Well, a lot of people really respect and listen to Judge Napoliano. Oh, Jesus. Judge Napoliano. I'm having a day here, aren't I, with my elocution. Regardless, a lot of people really respect him and listen to what he has to say. The fact of the matter is, I really don't know. I don't think Trump's name is on the list, okay? Other than the Wall Street Journal's list. We'll talk about that in just a second. But here is what Harry Ben Menashe said. He was rumored to be Robert Maxwell's Mossad handler. Okay, so Mossad, that's the Israeli intelligence agency. Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, no one disputes, no one, that he was an agent for Mossad, that he was a spook, a spy. And now we see that Ghislaine Maxwell and the stuff that she's doing. So a lot of people think that he just handed the baton over to Ghislaine Maxwell. In fact, we've got an interview today with Nils Grevillius. He is a long-term private investigator in California, in LA. And he thinks that it wasn't Epstein that was really the Mossad, had the Mossad connection. He thinks it's Ghislaine Maxwell that did. But regardless, here is what the alleged Mossad handler, Harry Ben Menashe, has to say.
Because the mainstream media narrative is, we don't know about Ghislaine Maxwell. She denies all wrongdoing. And basically, Epstein was a pedophile and was a successful banker. He made lots of money, and he was a criminal pedophile, and he died in a jail awaiting justice. That's the story. Nothing to do with Mossad, nothing to do with the Israeli military intelligence, nothing to do with Israel.
Yeah, they would deny it. It's a real bad story, and they would deny it. But he was put straight with the Israelis by Robert Maxwell at the time, a military intelligence, and started working there for them.
So, I mean, where there's smoke, is there fire? I don't know. But the Wall Street Journal published an article yesterday saying that Donald Trump sent Jeffrey Epstein a birthday card and a book on Epstein's 50th birthday. And I think that may have been, I'm not sure how long ago, 15 or 20 years ago, perhaps. And it just sent Trump over the edge. He was mad as hell about that. And, Trump is not reluctant to suing people. He sued X, he sued ABC, he had a lawsuit with CBS, Paramount CBS. We're going to talk about that in a second. And now he is really threatening a lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, one risk that Trump has in suing the Wall Street Journal is that it will undoubtedly open Trump up to being deposed under oath. And I'm not sure that he wants that to happen if, in fact, we don't know everything there is to know about his relationship with Epstein. I personally don't believe that he did anything nefarious. I've watched many, many interviews with him on this subject. He has been very consistent that, yes, he had a relationship with Epstein. They were friends. They were at social events together in Manhattan many, many years ago. And then Epstein got a house in Palm Beach, just a mile from where we're sitting right now, just walking distance, really, from Mar-a-Lago. And Epstein became a member of Mar-a-Lago. But then one Saturday afternoon, I believe it was a Saturday afternoon, Epstein invited Trump over to his house in Palm Beach. And when Trump got there, he went into onto the grounds, and he saw a lot of young girls frolicking in the pool, and Trump became very uncomfortable, and he left. And then the rumors started circulating, and Trump dismissed Epstein from Mar-a-Lago and banned him from coming onto the premises. Now, that does not sound like behavior to me that would have occurred if Epstein had the goods on Trump, if there was a video of Trump doing something untoward, or if his name was on a list. I mean, I don't think you would want to provoke the potential blackmailer in that way. So I really discount those accusations. I think they're empty accusations. But Trump has consistently denied it. There have been no witnesses that have come forth that have said that they saw Trump on Epstein's island. I do think he took a flight on the plane, but it wasn't to Epstein Island. I think there were other people on the plane with him. And so I just don't think that you're going to find anything bad about Trump in the files. Now, I could be mistaken. I was wrong once. It turned out I was right. So, maybe I'm wrong twice, but my instincts tell me that Trump is not vulnerable where Epstein is concerned. As our guest, Nils Grevillius, will tell you, he suspects that it's Mossad. He suspects Ghislaine Maxwell, by virtue of her father, Robert Maxwell, that she is really the one that engineered this with, I don't know, Epstein's knowledge and consent, obviously. Maybe they could be in it together. But if the thing that concerns me, and the reason that I believe that this story just will not go away, I suspect that there is no chance that Mossad would be running a honeypot inside our sovereign lands without the CIA knowing it. We spy on them, they spy on us. I ascribe a 0% likelihood that this could have happened without the CIA knowing it. And if they did know it, why would they allow it to continue unless they were in on it? And that's where I also am at somewhat of a loss. Why would you want to get the goods on Bill Clinton after he was no longer president? Unless it's maybe to get to Hillary Clinton. And Bill Gates, what does it advance? I mean, that's what a lot of the talking heads speculate, that Gates was on the list. We've heard it repeatedly. What does Mossad or the CIA get by by leveraging Gates? I mean, he's very active around the world in health areas, in world health. I just don't know. And I think that's why it won't go away. We don't know what we don't know, and what we don't know is in the FBI's files. And there's an issue with the FBI's files. Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and Pam Bondi promised us that they would give us the files, and they haven't. So now there is the sense that there is a cover-up. The worst you can say, or I guess the best you can say, is that it's damn suspicious. And we just want to know the truth. People in America don't want to support murder. We don't want to support blackmail. We don't want to support illegal activities in order to protect our own sovereignty. I don't think we do. But then there is a debate about that. If Russia and China and Israel are doing it, and we don't do it, then their intelligence and their leverage is going to be better than our leverage. And so we'll end up losing the fight. I don't know. I just don't know. I debate. I have internal debates in my own brain every day about what the right answer would be if that was the case. And I'm conflicted by it. And but there are bounds. There should be bounds, and there should be guardrails. That's the thing that I am the most concerned about. If we have to break some eggs to make an omelet, I get it. But there should be clear lines of authority and clear boundaries around those things that should be established. And if the rules are going to be broken, then they need to be broken with the approval and consent of someone like the commander-in-chief. That would be my premise. So the Wall Street Journal is not the only people that may be looking at a lawsuit. CBS was looking at a lawsuit, and they just canceled Stephen Colbert. Hallelujah, praise God. There is a God, and conservatives continue to win. Now we got to still put up with this buffoon for another year and some time. But here's what he said last night, or Thursday night, when CBS announced that they were canceling.
Now, I believe this kind of complicated financial settlement with a sitting government official has a technical name in legal circles. It's big fat bribe. Because This all comes as Paramount's owners are trying to get the Trump administration to approve the sale of our network to a new owner, Skydance.
I don't know. I can't stand this guy. I really can't. He can't leave the stage fast enough for me. But CBS, Paramount, paid Trump $6 million in settlement of his lawsuit against them. And now Colbert is saying that that was a bribe and that they must have another reason for having canceled his terribly successful show. Yeah, right. The viewership is down by 50% since David Letterman left. And so the stories I've read is that CBS and Paramount just made a strictly financial decision. Hey, the model isn't working. And what model would work when you intentionally and proactively try and alienate half your potential customers? I mean, at least half this country, more than half, based on the last election, are conservative Republicans because they voted for Trump. They're MAGA. And so all Stephen Colbert has done, his whole brand has been based on trashing Trump. And now, isn't justice poetic? I'm so happy to see it. And I'm also happy to see that Tesla, which we talk about quite a bit, is really rallying. Their robo-taxi trial in Austin has been so successful that they have now enlarged the area that they're servicing by a factor of 2. The robot, Optimist, it continues being developed. And just this week, there have been announcements regarding new cars, new models that are coming, including a new Model Y, which will have 6 seats. So you will no longer have to buy the very expensive X. If you want 6 seats, you can buy a Model Y. And my son has a Model Y. I happen to have a Model X. And the interiors are very similar. So if you give the Y 6 seats, I don't know that they will continue to offer the Model X. They price a lot of people out of the market. Also, they are going to make, the rumors have been persistent for 2 or 3 years that the robo-taxi will probably be refashioned also as a commercially available vehicle that will be under $40,000, and it may be under $30,000. Now, Tesla's not very good at keeping secrets. There are a lot of YouTubers that are out there that fly drones over their factories and watch every move that takes place. I don't know how they do it. I think I'd go out of my mind with boredom. But that one little nugget that they get that they're hoping for makes it all worthwhile. And it usually, we know by now if there is a secret that is going to be that somebody's going to blow the lid off of. We have not really seen that. And so what am I talking about? Like when they were starting to make the Cybertruck, which has done pretty good, but the demand is weakened for it. There was a very large crate that showed up in Austin at the Tesla factory. And it was brought inside under cover of night. It was not uncrated outside, but it was so large that people speculated that it was the injection mold to make the Cybertruck with. And it turned out that they were exactly right. And then other times people have flown drones over the Tesla factory in Austin and in Fremont, and that they will see something that will tip the hand, like a new battery, for instance, that a YouTuber discovered, a very large new battery that was for commercial purposes. So we just haven't seen anything like that, but the rumors are rampant that is coming, and I suspect that they may be onto something. Well, thank you for joining us today. We've got thousands of you on Getter right now interacting with us. We welcome the rest of you folks to come over to Getter. look for the John Fredericks live feed. You can also look for John Gordon Truth while you're there and subscribe to our channel. We cannot live stream on Getter until we get 100 subscribers. Now, we got 1,300 in the works on YouTube, but we haven't gotten up to 100 on Getter on our own channel. So if you're on Getter watching us on the John Fredericks channel, I would invite you just to search for John Gordon Truth and subscribe to us. Then we can get up to 100, and then we can live stream to you there. We also live stream to you on Rumble, X, YouTube, and Facebook Live, so you can watch us there as well. And we would welcome your subscriptions if you're not subscribed, and if you do like our material, you're certainly welcome to hit the like button if you do. Today's Truth is brought to you by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. They're a restaurant services business located right there in good old Atlanta, Georgia. And they service the restaurants in the greater Atlanta area. They pick up their waste vegetable oil, service their grease traps, provide containment services. They also offer deep cleaning in the front of the house and the back of the house. They'll even clean their vent hoods to keep them compliant with the health department. Call Perfect Circle or look them up on the web, pcrenergy.com, and give them a call. The number's displayed right there. Call them and tell them if you're interested in getting somebody that will provide good, consistent, clean service, that you don't have to call and get an automated attendant and wait for days to get a call back that never comes. Meanwhile, while your waste oil is overflowing out back behind your restaurant, causing a mess. So Perfect Circle Renewable Energy has offered clean, reliable service for over 15 years. They've got a commanding market share in the Atlanta area, and I know that they would welcome you as a restaurant partner, pcrenergy.com. So our guest today, Nils Grevillius, who we've talked about. We're going to talk about the Epstein list and the JFK assassination. I liked Detective Grevillius until we got off on JFK. He proposed an absolutely absurd theory that no living American who's bothered to look could support in 2025. Rodger Friedman will be here. He's going to be talking about fixing a broken America. And then Douglas Ernest will join us, and he'll be talking about his memoir and his Where All the Profits Go to Helping Veterans. So certainly a wonderful, good cause. We're coming to you on the John Fredericks Radio Network in Nashville, Atlanta, Richmond, Norfolk, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Morgantown, West Virginia. And I think also Lynchburg, Virginia is a recent addition. So 22 AM and FM radio stations in those cities. We'd love for you to come and watch our live streams where you can see the clips that we put up. You can hear the clips over the radio, but it's a lot more exciting if you're able to watch it on the live stream. And as I told you, we come to you also on cdmpress.com. cdmpress.com. cdmmedia.press. Well, what is it, Anthony? I don't know. I'm all messed up today. cdm.press. I think that's right. Oh, okay. So we come to you on their 13 digital platforms. Hopefully we'll continue to come to you on their platforms, since I just screwed that up royally. But they also take our feed and simulcast on Rumble, Getter, and their other social media. So check out CDM Media Press. That I can get. And I'll get you the website exactly. We'll put it in the comment section as well. All right. Well, let's get to our first guest. And Nils Grevillius. Nils Grevillius has spent an entire career investigating crime. We've invited him onto The Truth today to talk to us about none other than Jeffrey Epstein. So, Detective Grevillius, what's up? Did he commit suicide?
Almost certainly, but not in the context that you've been told.
Okay, we'll explain that.
Okay, well, just mere hours before Mr. Epstein was dangled he was celled up with a man named Nicholas Tartaglione, who was a cartel assassin. So if you're running the Metropolitan Detention Center, are you going to make a man who is on a high power inmate bunk with an assassin, especially if he's on suicide watch?
Well, the guy, his roommate, left the cell a week earlier, as I've read, and B, Epstein was not on a suicide watch. Quite the contrary. All of his associates who spoke to him within a day or two of his death reported that he was in good spirits, including his lawyer, who delivered the news that he felt like he was going to be able to get him out in relatively short order, that the prior court order would preclude the state from prosecuting him, and that Epstein agreed with that assessment and was pretty upbeat and optimistic.
Okay, so let's take it backwards a step here.
Sure.
Why did the Federal Bureau of Prisons have him on a special watch to be checked on pretty frequently? Their notes were that he was a suicide risk.
I'm not aware of that, but I'll take your word for it.
Okay, so what if Tartaglione and Epstein had a conversation along the lines of, Jeff, it's time for you to say goodbye, and if you can't do you, I'm going to be doing you, and you won't like the way that I do you. Now, I don't have any proof that conversation took place, but it would make sense in light of some other things. The more I look at this, the more what Epstein had going on down there on that island looks like a honey trap that he was operating, probably or possibly to the benefit of one or more intelligence agencies. And what if, instead of Epstein being the boss, what if Epstein was just the hotelier and the bon vivant who was running the whole show, the man who liked teenage girls so much, and the boss was Ghislaine Maxwell? She's the one who's still alive, isn't she, John?
Yes.
Citizenship in a whole choice of nations, France, the UK, the British Empire, and the US?
I don't know her citizenship status.
Okay, well, that's the truth of it. She could go anywhere. Why did she choose to stay in the United States? Okay, number one. And number two, have you ever taken a look at her father, Robert Maxwell?
Yes.
Robert Maxwell was a Czecho immigrant to Great Britain who fought in the British Army during World War II. And his profile reads like either MI6 or Bond villain, one of the two. Take your pick.
I've read Mossad, that he was known to have had a relationship with Mossad.
Well, perhaps. But so doesn't that make the context of what Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell had going on that island look more like a honey trap than anything else?
Well, certainly that's what I and many other people believe. But I do know that Alan Dershowitz said that there was absolutely no connection between Epstein and Mossad, that he was not an agent of Israel, and that he'd never told him that he had a relationship with the CIA.
Well, okay, maybe Mr. Epstein isn't the one with the relationship. Maybe the person with the relationship is Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, let's look at one other contextual wrinkle. Southern District of New York, FBI, was being run by a character named James Dennehy, long-term special agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And in February, Attorney General Bondi demanded full disclosure to her office of every single thing Southern District of New York had on Epstein, all evidence, records, tapes, interviews, 301s, 302s, everything. And the next day, Dennehy resigned, not from the case, not from the office that he held, but from the Bureau. And at the time that occurred, the initial report was he was resigning, because he wanted the men and women in that office to dig in and outlast the Trump administration. That was the first report. And then a day or two later in the New York Times, they reported he was resigning out of disgust because Donald Trump had pardoned Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, for political corruption. And that's interesting to me. Why didn't Mr. Dennehy, if he was so high-minded, why didn't he resign when Joe Biden pardoned his entire family?
Or he could have resigned the day that Trump was elected on November the 6th, 2024. Right. Why did he wait so long?
And then it gets even better. So Dennehy is a special agent of the Bureau, and he doesn't specialize in fraud, banking-related matters, organized crime, trafficking of minors, any of that. Dennehy's bent focus and entire career in the Bureau is as a counterintelligence man. So if he's still in the Bureau, he has no choice about whether or not he has to testify, does he, Mr. Gordon?
That I don't know.
Well,
if he was guilty of something, he would be able to assert a Fifth Amendment right, but I don't know that what he would be alleged to have done. And if he's a private citizen, I don't think that it changes anything. I think that he could be subpoenaed, questioned, and if he has a Fifth Amendment claim, he can assert it. But if he doesn't, then he has to testify anyway.
I think you're correct on that count, but I find the context of his resignation rather smelly, Mr. Gordon.
On that, we agree, Detective. Absolutely. So just a little background here. You worked for the LA Police Department for how long?
Never.
Never. Well, where did you work as a detective?
I started as a cavalry scout in the Army, and then I got recruited to counterintelligence and worked counterintelligence in the Army. And then after the Army, I got recruited by the Pinkerton Service, among others, and I worked as a special agent of the Pinkerton organization out of their Wilshire field office in Los Angeles.
Gotcha. So you've been a snoop, a private detective.
That's correct.
Okay, not with law enforcement
Well, a counterintelligence agent is a sworn law enforcement officer under U.S. Code 1811.
Okay, but in the military, right?
That's correct.
Okay, well, that counts. So just zoom out 30,000 feet. You think, you believe that Epstein did commit suicide, even though I have watched a video that Wolves and Finance has up that you can go watch right now. Zach, I can't remember his name, Galliopoulos something. He draws attention to the fact that video that we've been shown now, that's in the frame on the video, the autopsy concluded that it would not be consistent with a suicide.
Well, Mr. Gordon, I've seen many men after they've been strangled to death and things like that. And to hang somebody is to strangle them with a ligature. What would I have to do to get John Gordon into a ligature sufficient to kill him? I'd have to brutalize him. I'd have to hold him down. I'd have to do a lot of violence, not a little bit of blunt force trauma, a lot. The other thing is this video, they're working from a copy of a copy of a copy. They're not working with the original material.
So the video is of no value. It would not be admissible in a court of law if there's no chain of custody.
It's useless.
Yes.
It's window dressing on.
But what if you can see an orange jumpsuit passing by a little sliver of the camera presumably going into Epstein's cell? Wouldn't that raise a lot of suspicion? Wouldn't you want to know who that was?
I would love to know who it was, but I'm not seeing anything in the autopsy material that I've looked at to suggest to me that Epstein was killed by anybody other than Epstein. In terms of kinetic, that doesn't mean that Epstein wasn't told to kill himself to avoid being killed.
Well, I've spent an unhealthy amount of time looking at this. I'm not a detective. I've never been trained as a detective, but I have practiced law criminally. I worked for the district attorney in Bibb County, Georgia for 2 years while I was in law school. And then I represented a young lady who was charged with murder when I first became a lawyer and practicing. So I've had a little exposure. I don't claim to be an expert, but the problem that I have, we were told that Pam Bondi had the file. She was reviewing and it would be released. Then we get nothing. That is highly suspicious to me. Now, I would probably accept Pam Bondi, who I like, Kash Patel, who I've met, but I don't know. I'm not as big a fan on Kash Patel as everybody else seems to be. I don't dislike him. There's something about the guy that does not instinctively make me like jump on board. But he did good work with the Russia investigation. That's why he has risen to the top with David Neven, the congressman from California, Nunes. And then everybody loves Dan Bongino and thinks that he walks on water. So I actually want to believe them. And maybe the easiest solution is what we are actually being told. Maybe it's just exactly what they are saying. But there's one little problem, one little sticking point that I can't get past. The U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida, who prosecuted Epstein.
Acosta.
Yeah, Acosta. They asked him in a Senate confirmation hearing, why'd you go light on Epstein? He said, I was told to. I was instructed to because he was intelligence. Hello? I can't get past that. And so you've got a guy who is flagrantly a child predator, a human trafficker, and running a prostitution ring is basically what it amounted to. And we find out that he had connections with intelligence. Now, it could be, and I have considered this possibility as well, that maybe he did have a connection with intelligence, but maybe intelligence had absolutely nothing to do with the honeypot. I think that's a stretch, frankly, but it's possible they didn't know, or that they did know and they looked the other way. Maybe he was actually, well, I mean, what does Bill Gates have to offer the CIA? Or Bill Clinton, for that matter. Bill Clinton's already been president. He's retired. What does compromising him have to do with anything when he's already been in hot water for Monica Lewinsky? I mean, what is the motivation? They can't control him. Why would they want to control Bill Clinton? Why would they want to control Bill Gates?
I don't think that Gates or Clinton were the objects of the operation.
That's another theory that I think is probably valid. They just got swept up in it.
Well, how about this? What if they were the window dressing to make it look nicer to lure other men in? In other words, I'm going to have access to Bill Gates and Bill Clinton if I go to Pitcairn Island. Right, exactly. And that's often how a human intelligence operation is played. You're going to be in this milieu where everybody's relaxed and enjoying themselves, and there are going to be charismatic, interesting people there, and you're going to drop your guard. And while you're there, you're going to do things you might not otherwise do, and you might become garrulous at times that you should not be garrulous, and we might have access to your telephone and your other devices while you're there. I don't know. I wasn't running the job. But I will say that the intelligence services of most nations, John, are amoral. To use teenage girls as bait would be de rigueur.
Why teenage girls? I mean, you don't have to have teenage girls to be bait. Why wouldn't you just have a 21-year-old? There are lots of really pretty 21-year-olds. Why do we have to cross that line is the other question that I wondered. Why did Epstein have to cross that line? Oh, he liked him young. Okay, well, 21 is plenty young. Okay.
John, I agree with you, but wouldn't that pre-qualify your prospects a bit? In other words, you're getting men who are in there looking at and looking for risky behavior.
So you're saying that underage girls would be more alluring than of age girls? I'm not following you.
For some men, yes, and for some women.
Yeah. Well, I'll just be honest with you. I liked the girls when I was in high school and college, but I knew never, ever, ever, ever to have any association with a woman under the age of consent, ever. It was just a line that you did not cross, and you'd be a damn fool if you did, because it was illegal, one, and illegal, two, and immoral, one.
Right.
And so I can't assimilate that part of this. It's just
that's because you're not a psychopath, John.
Well, you think all these guys that went to Epstein Island were psychopaths that engaged in the illicit activity?
Some of them clearly were, weren't they?
I don't know. I really don't. I don't know who went to Epstein Island.
The definition of a psychopath, Mr. Gordon, is a man with no conscience.
Yeah, very true. Yes, defined that way. Sure. I think that's a symptom of a psychopath, isn't it? But not the entire complexity of the disease.
I think it's the overarching idea of a psychopath is no conscience, and you can add to it a metastatic ego and an amazing ability to inculcate sympathy in third-party dupes.
Hey, producer Anthony, would you please look up metastatic for me? Jump on that one. I want to add that to my vocabulary. Let's do it. My reckless attempt at humor.
No, it's all good. I mean, there's some known characteristics of the psychopath. Let's add another one here, John. How about needing to be treated specially just to feel normal? What about using
I just like to be treated normally for a change. Instead of forget special, just give me normal respect.
Right, well,
I had a lady at the fast food counter this morning that wouldn't give me a piece of bread with my black beans and rice. I'm Rodney Dangerfield on steroids.
Well, should have dyed your hair purple, John, if you were going in there looking for respect. What were you thinking? So those are characteristics of a psychopath. And once a man becomes a psychopath, you can't make him unpsychopath. It's a permanent state of being. It's a personality disorder. It's not psychosis like bipolar disorder or paranoid schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. It's permanent.
You don't think it's genetic? You think that it is a learned habit, or
it is inculcated by dint of reward for negative behavior, a random reward, not consistent reward. Brian Kohberger, the man who just pleaded guilty to the 4 college girl murders up in Idaho, is a psychopath who probably got inculcated reward through social media and searchable internet porn. And the reason he pleaded to that, John, was probably because he didn't want his parents or the general public to know the search history of his pornography in his phone and computer.
Wow.
These are men with secrets, John.
So let's run down the list real quick in the minutes remaining. You believe that Epstein did commit suicide, maybe under duress, that if you don't kill yourself, I'm going to kill you, and it's going to hurt a lot. It was, and that he was likely intelligence. You seem to be pretty clear that that is a subtext of this whole thing.
I think that's the whole shooting match, as they say down in Georgia, John.
Yeah. So release the list or not?
Release the entire file and just let it hang where it may. But I'll tell you why they haven't. I think this is just my analysis, looking at it contextually. They're still deriving benefit from the operation and or whatever foreign partner existed in this, whether it's MI6 or French DGSC or Mossad, is still running cases based on the work done by Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein.
I think that's a very compelling analysis. I think you may very well be spot on. So with the, you say release the whole case files, and that would include the list, whatever that looks like. I mean, they could be on the back of paper napkins or grocery bags or legal pads or a Excel spreadsheet, or maybe it's just a Outlook contact list. I don't know. I'm torn about whether we should see a list, because I suspect that there may be people on the list that just knew Epstein. Maybe they knew him socially, had never been to Epstein Island. Maybe they were on the list where he had invited them. And what if they didn't go? Are we really going to wreck these people's lives and destroy their marriages for something that they had no complicity in? That seems to be a major risk to me that I think bears some consideration.
Okay. I'm one of those guys who likes to see everything, John. You know, I've known a lot of bad people in my life. I knew Suge Knight before he went to prison, met him a few times. I've met a few political characters who are absolutely notorious. You remember James Traficant?
Yeah, he killed Kennedy. Or was involved.
No,
Did he not?
I've talked to a few bad people in my day.
Yeah, well, look, I'm not worried about the bad people. I'm worried about the innocent people who may have just, I use the example on a podcast earlier today that I was interviewed for, and they were asking me about the list. Did I think the list should be revealed? And I was like, absolutely not. I mean, I think you categorize it in three categories. A, people who you have proof positive, they're, i.e. videoed, having sexual relations with a minor. Bam, go to jail, do not collect $500, don't pass go. Those names can be released. Public condemnation is an appropriate result. The people who went there and may have had sex with someone of age, was it consensual? Who is to say that it was consensual? Now, if the video shows that he was raping the girl, then that's not consensual. Same category, he's in category 1. But what if you go to Epstein Island, you meet a girl at dinner, she's 21 years old, and she wants to have sex with you? Are you really going to trot her name out in public, or not her name, but the perp, and ruin his life and ruin his career and ruin that person's marriage? Probably.
How ruined will it be?
Permanently.
We live in the age of the Diddy party, Mr. Gordon. Somebody's going to be scheduling 5 Diddy parties this weekend. I'm being cynical here, okay?
No, I got it. I understand. And I understand that the quick and easy things, just put it all out there and be done with it. But I do worry about the innocent people whose lives may be ruined, who were guilty of nothing.
How about all of the people who are going to be impugned by dint of the accusations of people who know nothing? And that has already occurred, like with Alan Dershowitz.
And he had to defend himself. And his answer is put it all out there and let them defend themselves like I did. I just don't think that's right. I'm going to put your name on the list and you can defend yourself. I bet you Dershowitz spent hundreds of thousands of dollars defending himself. And he was falsely accused. I can't go there. But anyway, that's a minor.
People have said bad things about me before, John. I'm happy to defend myself.
Me too. That's probably why I'm hypersensitive to the matter. I ran for office twice, I know what it's like in the arena. So let's run down the list real quick. JFK.
What about him?
Oswald killed him, acted alone?
President Kennedy was the last war hero Democrat president, and he was shot down and slaughtered by an American communist named Oswald. And the hard left has done everything they can to drive Oswald's getaway car ever since. And I won't brook any nonsense about anybody other than Lee Harvey Oswald having murdered that president.
Oh, my God. Detective, how much time do we have?
Lee Oswald tried to kill General Walker weeks before he killed President Kennedy.
That's one I do not have an answer to. I do not understand the General Walker transaction.
I do.
I don't know anybody who says that Oswald didn't try to do that. I cannot assimilate that.
With the same rifle.
I'm not sure about that.
With the same rifle.
But
with the same rifle.
Okay, so do you believe that Oswald had a connection with the CIA?
I believe Oswald was under surveillance by the CIA. I think that James Jesus Angleton was running a case where he's watching Oswald after Oswald went to Mexico City to see who else Oswald was meeting with. After killing President Kennedy, Oswald left the book depository and was walking to a theater. He got detained by a Dallas police officer that he murdered.
J.D.
And then
Tippit.
went in. Yes, and then he went into the movie theater. Clearly, he was going somewhere to meet with someone.
Maybe he was going to meet his CIA handler.
Maybe he was under surveillance by the CIA on the day that it had occurred, and the handler knew that JFK had been killed and never made it to the meet. What if it was Cuban intelligence or somebody from the Fair Play for Cuba committee that Oswald was going to meet?
That's rank speculation. There's no evidence of that. Does the name G. Gordon Liddy mean anything to you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I knew Gordon.
Okay. What about his deathbed confession to his son, St. John's Hunt, 60 miles south of where I'm sitting right now, saying that he was in Dealey Plaza on the day and he was part of the CIA cleanup squad? You can watch it on YouTube. It's right there.
Yeah.
What about LBJ's mistress, who said that she was with him the night before he came out of a meeting with high-powered men, including Texas oil men, and he said, after tomorrow, those SOBs will never embarrass me again, in a very agitated state? What about the magic bullet theory? What about the fact that
they're all working? They're all working from copies of copies. They're not working with the original material in terms of all of the ballistics. Okay, John, it is my belief that
they've got the pristine bullet. What are you talking about?
They're working with copies of copies. They're working off of bad material. Okay, Oswald murdered Kennedy. Oswald was an American communist. Mark Lane, the man who wrote the books that started all of the nonsense about Oswald having not killed him, was also Jim Jones' lawyer, and the last man to see Jim Jones prior to Jim Jones ordering the assassination of Congressman Leo Ryan.
Well, I think that's guilt by association. I don't know what it's got to do with killing Kennedy. I mean,
I think that it has a lot to do with the American left doing every single thing they can to try to absolve Oswald, because in absolving Oswald, they're absolving themselves. Oswald was the face of Antifa in 1963.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I just can't go there with you, Detective. I mean, do you know that LBJ was under investigation? And that Kennedy was dumping him
LBJ
from
was
the
a
ticket?
Scumbag. Of course he was under investigation. He was one of the biggest crooks in politics. He stole with both hands.
And you know that he was associated with a man who committed murder at a country club in, I believe it was Fort Worth. And let's see, I can't remember.
Is that the murder of E.C. Mullendore?
I can't remember. I want to say it was Billy Saul's Estes, but I think that's who LBJ was in cahoots with something untoward and illegal. I cannot remember off the top of my head, but this guy was convicted of murder. Mm-hmm. He was given, the judge commuted his sentence. He was allowed to walk out of the courtroom after a jury of 12 convicted him, and his fingerprint. And it's not disputed that Mary Smith died for time. Said 3 books, and let's come back and
I've read plenty of material. I'd like you to look up Mark Lane and his history as a Marxist.
Rush to Judgment in 1973 when I was in college. That's what put me on.
He also co-wrote the screenplay for Executive Action. Okay.
All right, and I've got a speeding ticket 10 years ago.
So why is he so hot and bothered to acquit Oswald after the fact?
Well, I don't know that it's acquit Oswald. I think it's to identify the true people who killed Kennedy.
No, Mark Lane's purpose was to acquit Oswald, and he said so.
Well, I don't know that, and
I do.
I know there were two ladies in the school book depository that said no one went up or came down the stairs to the sniper's nest.
How did Oswald's 5 minutes
before,
get up there?
5 minutes after? And we've got eyewitnesses that saw Oswald sitting at a table sipping a Coca-Cola 10 minutes before the assassination. He was sitting at the same table sipping the same Coca-Cola when the manager of the school book depository ran through the break room with two Dallas police officers. They said, "Who is that?" And he said that he works here, and they ascended the steps up to the sniper's nest. So I think there's and no paraffin on Oswald, no fingerprints on the gun from Oswald.
It was his rifle, and it had his DNA on it.
I don't think we did DNA in 1963.
They didn't have DNA at the time. He used that rifle to attempt to assassinate Walker. It was his rifle. The .38 special that he used to kill the Dallas police officer was his. Okay. What reason did Oswald have to kill Officer Tibbetts?
The fact of the matter is, those are both stumbling points for me. There are a lot of people, a lot of authors, a lot of journalists who believe that there was an Oswald body double, and there is a belief that this person was in the theater where Oswald eventually ended up. But that's a rabbit hole I really have not gone. I will keep around the shot and killed him.
And those are all
I have
very
no knowledge.
Sirhan.
Oh my God, Jesus! All right, we'll come back.
I actually know members of the Sirhan family. He grew up in Pasadena.
He has no recollection.
It was his gun. He also said that he was there to kill Bobby Kennedy. I've seen the 4473 that he filled out when he bought the gun. He was clearly there shooting a gun.
He was standing in front of Bobby Kennedy, and Kennedy's head was blown off from behind him.
He took a bullet right behind the ear, didn't he?
Yeah.
Okay, there was a second gun. Somebody else saw a second gun, and it was one of the bodyguards or officers drew a gun. But the only gun that was discharged in that kitchen was that of Sirhan. Now, what was Sirhan doing there with a gun? Sirhan admitted to shooting at Bobby Kennedy.
No, he did not. That is not true. He said he has no recollection of having killed Kennedy.
He said that he was there, and his own lawyer.
Well, we know he was there, but he's never admitted to killing Kennedy. He said that he was
there to kill Kennedy, and his own lawyer admitted that he had killed Kennedy.
Hey, detective, do you work for the CIA?
I beg
your
pardon?
Any CIA affiliations?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't have an Ivy League degree. Hell, I don't even have a high school diploma, John.
Okay,
they wouldn't let me park my car in Langley.
That's not responsive to the question. That feels like you just dodged my question.
I have a demonstrable history, a proven history for doing what it is that I've done professionally. How about James Earl Ray, the alcoholic Roman Catholic, who was always broke and was suddenly flush with cash? And he identified a man named Raoul as having paid him to assassinate King. He had so much money, in fact, that he could flee the country. He went to Canada, then to England. Now, he described Raoul as swarthy, right? What if King were under surveillance by Hoover's men on the day that he was assassinated, both technical surveillance and physical surveillance? What if FBI agents actually witnessed the assassination of Martin Luther King by James Earl Ray? And I do believe James Earl Ray was the trigger man. But what if the party who paid James Earl Ray was not the KKK? What if it was Nation of Islam? Wasn't the KKK by 1968 pretty well infiltrated by Hoover? didn't they have a situation where they couldn't turn left or right without stumbling over an FBI man or an FBI informant?
All right, so
How
what's your
well
point?
how well could the Klan have kept a secret like the assassination of King by 1968? I don't think they could have kept a lid on that by that point.
I have no insight into the assassination of MLK. I've spent 60 years reading about the Kennedy assassination. I was at home from the fourth grade watching As the World Turns with my mother when The Flash came on. I had had the flu and I'd just gotten out of bed. And I told myself, if you don't get out of bed, you're never going to get well. I went down to the family TV and sat next to my mom, and we watched Walter Cronkite announce that the president had been shot. And I've been obsessed with it ever since, and I still am. And just very candidly, no disrespect intended, but I was digging you until you've dug your heels in on JFK. I don't know any living American with a brain and any serious reading of JFK's assassination that would conclude in 2025 that Oswald killed him. I mean, it is so far debunked and so implausible that I just don't know why you would say that.
I believe that the CIA completely dropped the ball on that they allowed him to run in this nation after having defected to the Soviet Union once and after having visited the Soviet and Cuban embassies in Mexico City.
Yeah, we know all that. Those are CIA talking points.
James Jesus Angleton took a chance,
state has been saying, and it was
a dumb chance.
Years.
He did not take the threat that Oswald posed seriously. And that's where the CIA screwed up, right there.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Detective Nils Grevillius. He's the author of 6 books, and he's got a 7th one coming out next year. And where is my note? You've gotten me so off my game here. The Last Lawman will be published in a few months. If you care to read it, I'm sure you can find it on Amazon, right?
It'll be for sale everywhere that Post Hill books are sold. I want to thank you for the opportunity to come on your show, and I'm always ready to defend my thesis, John.
Well, what I can do and what I will do, I'll have you back on. Let me go collect all of my notes made over the last 50 years, and we'll just break them down one by one. And you tell me why you think that the people that have put forth these theories are wrong. And I'd be happy to have that conversation with you.
There's another book, Toward the Magic Bullet theory, written by a colleague of mine that I disagree with, named Tink Thompson, and it's entitled 6 Seconds in Dallas. That's another one you might want to look at.
I've heard of the book. I have. I will be happy to read it.
All right. Well, John, it's a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you, Nils. I appreciate your coming on. Nils Grevillius. He is a detective and an author and a very, what should we say, engaging guest. He certainly got me going, and probably our audience. Have a great rest of your weekend. Rodger Friedman is a retired retirement wealth planner. He claims that America is broken, and he's even written a book about it by that very title, Erasing America, Broken Politics, Broken Country. Rodger, welcome to The Truth.
Thank you, John. How are you today?
Very well, thank you. Here in West Palm Beach, Florida, where it's only about 88 degrees and it feels like about 108 because it is so humid.
You're about 5 degrees cooler than I am.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, we do get an ocean breeze, and I would imagine that you do as well. But tell me, what was the inspiration for the book? Why do you think America is broken?
Well, when I moved down to Florida from Maryland during the height of COVID, I'd read the paper and I'd get angry at so many things that I was reading, what Congress was doing, what the Biden administration was doing. And I felt that I had to somehow spread the word to tell somebody. So I created a 1-page email to friends and family every Sunday and I called it the Sunday Memo. And I'd write about various things that really annoyed the hell out of me about what liberals and progressives were doing to this country. And lo and behold, the people that I sent it to really liked what they were reading. And as time went on, I couldn't limit it to one page. It started to become 2, 3, 4,000 words every week. And one fine day, my sister, Diane, God love her, said, you got a makings of a book here. That was after the 48th Sunday Memo. So my book, Erasing America, is actually a compilation of my first 48 memos. And right now I'm writing memo number 105.
If House Bill 1 had passed back in 2021, we would not have a two-party system in America today, I do not believe. And I had the same sense that you did, that we really were erasing the America that we knew. And you've got Barack Obama, who perpetrated the biggest fraud on America that anybody has, maybe second only to Biden. It felt like there for a while we were never going to get out of this. And the amount of duplicity that they engaged in was just shocking to my conscience.
Yeah, and the latest is with the auto pen, obviously. It seemed that we had a despicable government that just knew no bounds, and they weren't bound by the same rules and laws that we were.
Well, how do you feel about our country today? Are we regaining America? Are
we are regaining,
reclaiming
we are
it?
on a better path. I was a supporter of President Trump. I've known of Donald Trump all my life because
me too.
I grew up in Midtown Manhattan. My dad had a laundry right at Times Square, and I used to deliver to Trump Tower. Okay?
I'll be darned.
So I never met him, but I was aware of him. And, one of the best books I've ever read, I don't know if you're familiar with it, it's called Trump Style Negotiation. Okay?
I have not seen that book.
Okay, this book is by George Ross. If you remember back when The Apprentice was on the air,
sure,
there was a little old man sitting right next to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Who was his chief negotiator, George Ross. And he's the one that before he ever met Donald, he closed 706 major real estate deals in New York City. And then Trump called on him to help him with the Grand Central Hyatt deal, which exploded Trump's career. But George Ross taught a course on negotiation at NYU. But I was rereading the book, and Donald Trump wrote the foreword. And here's what he said in one sentence. I like to work in broad strokes, deal with the big picture, but not the details. Okay? And that's exactly what you see going on now. And journalists are saying, oh, you're pivoting. Oh, you're a taco, all this nonsense. But, think of it this way. He throws a lot of spaghetti against the wall. Some of it is going to stick. Some of it won't. Birthright citizenship, deportations, the wall, etc. But he operates in broad strokes and then relies on a world-class cabinet to try to get things through to the finish line. But I am so jazzed at the fact that we have a proactive leader now instead of someone who hides in the White House.
Totally. And you don't have any question about who is in charge.
Oh, and there's transparency.
There's transparent. Well, sort of. We'll get to that. I've got a bone to pick. Donald Trump became really famous by virtue of The Apprentice. And that was a reality TV show where they actually did basically contest based around a business idea that two teams would go out and try and develop. And we saw how Donald Trump thought, and we saw his toughness, and we saw his candor. And it feels very similar to that to me today when you watch him in a cabinet meeting. I mean, he is performing just no less than if he were on The Apprentice.
Yeah, and you've noticed there have been 6 televised cabinet meetings. I don't think Biden had 6 cabinet meetings in his whole career.
Well, it depends on whether you count the ones that Dr. Jill, who is no doctor, conducted. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. I don't even want to get started on it because it just makes my blood boil. I've maintained consistently that Biden was an illegitimate president, seated illegitimately, and brought illegitimate actors into the White House and the highest level of government.
I agree with you.
And I'm just not going to get worked up over it again today. I've spent the last 4 years being worked up, and I am so optimistic about what President Trump is doing with the one elephant in the room, and that is the Epstein files. You know, Nixon had this pesky little thing called Watergate that brought his presidency down, but it wasn't the burglary. Watergate is named for the burglary of the Watergate Tower where the DNC had its headquarters. That's where the name Watergate came from.
Yeah, I used to work about 2 miles from there, and I'd pass by there every day on the way to work.
Yeah, and I spent the night there about 4 months ago when I was in D.C. at the hotel at the Watergate.
They reopened it?
Yeah, and you can even go have a tour of the Watergate office building where the DNC was located, and you can see the bedroom where the burglars staged their.
Well, there's always an 800-pound elephant in the room. Right now, it's Epstein. I don't give a damn about the Epstein files. As far as I'm concerned, move on to more important things.
No, you're taking a line out of Richard Nixon's 74 press conference, and you're taking a line out of Donald Trump's press conference last weekend. And I'm telling you, I do care. And I'll tell you why.
Right.
Because I think that we can't see the files because I think it implicates our federal government. And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the fact that they killed Kennedy.
Yeah.
I think they probably brought down Building 7. I don't know. I can't extrapolate beyond that, but let's just agree that Building 7 was a controlled demolition. Okay. Every architect, every engineer that has looked at it has said that's not shrapnel from the World Trade Center buildings, from the towers. That is a controlled demolition. So what the hell? And then we've got Butler, July 13th, 2024. I would like to know, where is Maxwell Urich and what role did he play? I'd like to know where Maxwell Urich's van is that we saw being towed away on national television. And I would like to know, who was Epstein working for? It would take no imagination at all to figure it out. They probably have it in the files. And if they don't have it in the files, they can go look through his canceled checks, or his deposits, I should say, and see who was paying him.
Right.
It wouldn't be that difficult. Now, I've been thinking a lot about this, and you see this logo behind me. I really do care about the truth, and I want the truth in all facts, in all settings, relating to our government. They do not have the luxury of keeping secrets beyond the point of when the reason for the original secret expires.
Yeah.
But when the mission is complete and the people are dead, give us the damn information. And that's what we see with Epstein, I believe.
We keep hearing of false news, and the fact that journalists put a negative slant on almost everything having to do with the president.
I mean, I love Trump. I am a forever Trumper. I voted for him 3 times. I've given him a lot of money.
Same.
He actually gave me money for my campaign when I ran for attorney general. He donated to a friendly PAC, and we were able to. They were able to use the money to educate voters, and so I love Trump. But I don't love the fact that he told us he was going to give us all the information on Epstein, JFK, RFK, and Martin Luther King. And it's been very slow in coming out. And I don't suspect, I do suspect that we have not gotten the bad stuff. What we've mostly gotten is stuff that's already in the public domain.
Oh, I understand that there are things that are going to really piss me off what's going on in the Trump administration, but there are literally dozens of balls in the air right now.
There is no question. And I don't want
China, et cetera,
our
and
economy,
Epstein is
tariffs,
just one of those balls.
Yeah, I don't want to drop any of those balls either, but I'm not willing to compromise on the truth.
I get
And our government, I think, is rotten to its core.
Yeah.
And they break laws that you and I would go and spend the rest of our lives in prison for. And there's a guy on YouTube who I really admire. His name's Zach, and he has a podcast called Wolves in Finance. Well, last weekend, and we're going to share segments of that today on the program, he shows the video of the camera in the jail where Epstein was, the one video that they gave us. And damned if you can't see an orange jumpsuit walking up the stairs into Epstein's cell. They thought that was going to clear the air, and all it did was muddy the water. And it was proximate to when Epstein is believed to have died.
Right.
Notice I did not say committed suicide. There is so much evidence against the notion that Epstein committed suicide. And the cameras were gone out, except for this one camera. And the camera that we were given had a minute of erased video on it, or where the video, we're told, actually stopped for a minute. It stops that same minute every night.
Right.
And did for a decade. I just don't buy it.
Well, I've gotten to the point where I have to become comfortable in my own bones about what I'm uncomfortable with and what I will never know. There's a whole lot going on in the government. There are negotiations right now with a number of countries on tariffs. We have no idea what is being said right now until some journalist breaks a story and we learn, okay, there is now a 19% tariff with Indonesia, for example. But all this is going on behind the curtain, and I don't even know what I don't know.
Well, and all kinds of deals are being made. Sure. All right, well, we're going to tariff you, but then we'll give you a subsidy on the back end or on the front end or something. And so it's going to look like a tariff, but it's not really a tariff because we're going to give you the money back.
So all this is going on. And I know that between the Howard Lutnicks, the Treasury Secretary, Commerce, et cetera, that they are in a better position to get all this done than I am. I'm just a keen observer, and I report on what I see, okay, like you. And I understand that there's so much that I don't know what's going on.
And there's some that we shouldn't know what's going on. But I would like to know whether a backdoor deal was made with Qatar and the gift of the 747. Was that done with the knowledge that it would be used as an exhibit in the Trump library right down the road here in Boca Raton? I don't know, but I think if it is, that we should know about it.
Right. There's a whole lot we should know about, John.
Yeah, well, that's what inquiring minds want to know.
Right.
So I want to put America back together again, just like you do, but I want to do it in an ethical way. And I think that, the president is role modeling for every elected official in the country. Every bureaucrat in the country is watching, and they will mimic that behavior. And so I just think that leadership is very important.
John, you just said something that rang a bell. So I was reading an article yesterday, and it was talking about one of the Federalist Papers and the fact that John Adams, when he left the presidency, created a whole bunch of judges to be obstructionist for what Thomas Jefferson wanted to do. And although he had the legal authority to do that, was it ethical?
Well, probably not.
There is a whole lot of stuff that goes on in government that is right on that line, and you and I would have a problem with the ethics of it.
Yeah. Okay. But then again, I watch, and I was trained as a lawyer, so I have these very complicated.
And thank God I was not trained as a lawyer.
contradictory conversations with myself. But, I was watching Julian Dory, who also has a YouTube podcast. He's a young guy. And I'm telling you, the amount of knowledge that he possesses is just unbelievable. I am really in awe of this guy. But he was having a conversation last week with an investigative journalist along the similar lines that you and I are. And they looked at each other and he said, but they said, China's doing this stuff. And Russia's doing this stuff. And Iran or Israel and Iran are doing this stuff. So if we don't do this stuff, they'll have superior intelligence to what we have, and then we'll lose. Well, I don't know how you answer that. I really don't. I mean, I can be moralistic and righteous and say, we're just not going to do that. Okay. And then we lose our country because we're not willing to play the game.
John, that goes back to, I have to be comfortable not knowing what goes on in the Situation Room. I just have to think that cooler heads will prevail. And I'm so happy that Donald Trump is in that Situation Room rather than Joe Biden and Anthony Blinken.
Amen. Praise the Lord. Yeah. So tell us about the book. How's it doing?
The book hit bestseller status on Amazon. I'm grateful for that. But, what I'm really grateful about is that I'm able to be on shows such as yours and just share some opinions that I think are important, because so much of the American population has been asleep at the switch. The fact that Kamala Harris got some 70 million votes, I find remarkable. And, someone once told me that the average American's an idiot. Okay. And I hate to think that is true.
I think P.T. Barnum actually informed us of that quite a century ago.
That depresses me. Like, the latest socialist mayor win in the primary in New York City, or the fact that Illinois keeps putting Pritzker back in office, or Newsom. It goes on and on and on. These people are not thinking with their head straight.
It boggles the mind.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Rodger Friedman, for coming on The Truth today. We've thoroughly enjoyed it. And feel free to come back anytime. We'll invite you back on here as events evolve, especially if we get the Epstein files. I'm going to bring you back and say, I told you so.
Right back at you, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodger. Have a great rest of your weekend. And that's The Truth. I'm John Gordon. We come to you every Saturday on the John Fredericks Radio Network in 8 cities and 22 AM and FM radio stations, as well as our live streams across the web on Getter, YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and X. That's the one. And we also put it up on podcasts like Spotify. Our listeners know that 2 years ago, I visited the Roosevelt Hotel in New York and had an opportunity to talk to some of the residents there. When I asked them about, what do they call that? Not immunity, but asylum. They said, what? They had no clue what they were doing there. They just knew they were there and getting meal cards, free rent, and a place and motor scooters to ride around on. I talked to merchants who were trying to earn a living proximate to the Roosevelt Hotel. They reported that their business had all been but shut down. And then I walked back to my hotel 4 blocks away, due west. And I encountered 3 people on the streets who were homeless, and 2 of them were veterans. That got my attention, folks. And I bet you it gets the attention of our next guest, Douglas Ernest. He has got a movement to try and help our veterans. They are helping veterans by supporting them, hiring them, helping homeless veterans, and taking them through their 4-block empowerment transition from military to civilian life. Douglas Ernest, Captain Douglas Ernest, welcome to The Truth.
Good morning, John. Hope you're doing well today, sir.
So does that story that I related sound at all familiar to you? And what is the matter with our country and its value system for not being more supportive of our veterans who actually put themselves in harm's way to protect our freedoms.
That story that you laid out was a very sad narrative that you explained of the previous administration. And, not only did they botch the foreign policy for our nation, but they botched the administration's policy for our veterans that are desperately in need of these resources. I too watched these play out, and I would see documentaries on YouTube. I would see things on TV and on conservative news channel laying out the truth of what was going on out there. And it was very sad. Like, they would interview veterans that were homeless on the ground, but yet there was illegal migrants staying at the Roosevelt that the Biden administration was encouraging to come in. And what was wrong with our country was we made a mistake. First of all, I didn't think the election was a actually warranted election. I believe it was flawed, and that brought flawedness into the White House. It brought something in the leadership.
How about fake?
Fake.
Yeah, I was a lawyer in Georgia on a lawsuit against the Fulton Board of Elections. I've seen the evidence. I've seen 200,000 or 20,000 fake votes in Fulton County, and as many as 400,000 in the state. And Raffensperger now, he got his training from Joe Biden, I guess, who shot the spy balloon down over the Atlantic after the mission was complete. Raffensperger is now going to clean up the voter rolls in Georgia
after a bad election. So we see this complete false narrative in the entire White House over the last few years, and it just made the suffering for the veterans out there even worse. So that was in my empowerment to write this book towards the middle of the Biden administration. I just felt like I couldn't be silent anymore. As a kid, I was taught by my grandparents to be silent and to be the silent majority and keep your views to yourself. But once I saw what was going on with the destruction of my nation, I just felt compelled to speak, and I was able to speak through my book. And I never imagined it would get the kind of movement that it had. It did that kind of direction. I get that much attention to it. So I've been so blessed.
The spirit of a true patriot.
Yes, thank you. And I hope that by writing this book, it makes a difference and encourages people to look out for veterans' needs and try to help contribute, because they desperately need these resources to help put them back on their feet.
So tell us about your service. Where did you serve, and in what capacity?
John, I joined the Army when I was 17 years old because I came from parents that didn't have enough money to pay for college. I left Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and joined the infantry in the U.S. Army. And 6 months later, I found myself on the ground in Operation Desert Storm as an infantryman. I then later stayed in the military and made a career out of it. And I bounced back and forth between infantry and armor, which is tanks. And then, throughout the years, I did what I was supposed to do. I paid attention, listened to my leaders, I became a patriot, someone that actually loved my country, appreciated my country. And I was able to find this deep appreciation because I was traveling to these traveling the world and finding myself in these third world countries where everybody, they actually adored the USA. Everybody wanted to come here. Everybody wanted to be like us. And I finally, just stayed in the military and did 2 tours. One tour was in the United States on the border of Mexico. And we actually kept an eye on the border down there because we were looking for terrorist cells to bring weapons across the border. And I was also training units that were on their way to Iraq. So my service was triangulated in many different ways because they used the reservists to plug the holes back then and to fill in those gaps where they need you, where the active duty forces couldn't do so.
So let me ask you, how did it make you feel when you learned that the premise for Desert Storm 1 was a lie?
I grew up as a kid being told that we had to do this for democracy. We had to do this for peace. We had to do this to protect our interests around the world and to help others around the world. So I was empowered as a young man to be able to fight and to put my life on the line. And when I did learn what had happened, truthfully, years later, decades later, and really understood it, I was very disappointed. That's a conversation me and my fellow veterans have all the time, and it's a great avenue of debate. I actually had a debate the other day in my office with a veteran who was going back and forth. He'd served in the Operation Desert Storm 2, a very close friend, and he has a different perspective. He was saying, we had to do what we have to do. You got to listen to your leaders, no matter what they tell you, whether you think it's right or wrong, you got to do it. And I said, yeah, I agree with you, my friend, but we have to understand we have to have our own opinion.
But what about when the leader flagrantly lies to you? What about when Pam Bondi tells us there is no Epstein list. And Kash Patel tells us, oh, I've seen the video. He committed suicide. Then they show us the video, and there's no real proof in the video that he committed suicide.
It's like, it's this paradox that we have, John, is, you try to be a patriot, you try to be someone that loves your government, try to be someone that loves your nation, and then you do feel diminished as it turned out to be to help those on top. And then you just mentioned some of the smaller items on my niche in life that are thrown at me. I've been watching lies for 4 years on my niche in life that are thrown at me. I've been watching lies for 4 years come at me, and people telling me the sky is red when I can see that it's blue. And I hope that I can have a better treatment from the Trump administration, as they mentioned Pam Bondi, because, we already know most of the truth. We've been told, we understand, we've heard, the rumors have been substantiated when we thought we were going to get the truth. Now, just a quick question, John, why do you think that this is being swept under the rug again from the administration that promises to give us the truth?
Well, if you want my honest belief.
Yes, please.
And it is just a belief. I think that Epstein was working for the CIA, or maybe he was working for Mossad, and that the revelation of that would be too hard for the American people to handle. Not to mention the fact that it is illegal, that it would be against the laws of our country, and it would also be against the laws of God. So that's my supposition. I mean, is there anyone in America today that believes that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone? Or more importantly, does anybody believe that he even acted? I don't even think he was in the sniper's nest. I have devoted a very unhealthy, substantial portion of my life studying the Kennedy assassination. And there is no doubt in my mind that Lyndon Baines Johnson and Allen Dulles killed the 35th president of the United States. Why are their names continuing to be permitted to be on iconic places like the LBJ freeway in Dallas? I think it is a disgrace that we continue to honor someone who killed his president. It really bothers me. I mean, to think that our country and our government could be that corrupt. And I don't think that the worst offenders actually are the people who did it. Equally complicit are the people who cover it up. And I'm sure they think that they're doing the nation a favor in some way by doing it. I happen to think that the CIA fulfills a very important role in our national defense and protecting our interests around the globe. There's certainly thousands of people who put their lives in harm's way every day to help protect our freedoms. But there is a group of people in the intelligence community, I believe, that are off the reservation, that are doing things that are illegal and are flagrantly immoral, ruining people's lives. I mean, we talk about JFK, but what about the other 100 people that were killed in the aftermath, that were witnesses in one way or another to the assassination? What about Corey Compouture in Butler, Pennsylvania, who was taken from his wife and 2 daughters at that theater in Butler? And why have we not gotten the truth about it? And so that's just a long explanation leading me to the conclusion that I believe that we need a cleansing in America. We have got to come up with a method for people to confess their sins or their knowledge, and that we get it all out in the open, and we join hands as a country and say, moving forward, we're not going to do these things any longer. And if we do them, there's going to be a line of authority where it is vetted and approved, because some of them may very much be in our country's best interest.
Let me ask you this again, and building on that, did you not think that the Trump administration and the people that he picked, which I thought was great leadership at the top, was going to fix some of the challenges that you just mentioned?
I absolutely did. And it is a mystery to me that they have not done what they committed to do, and that now I feel that they are, to some extent, being disingenuous with the American people.
And I know that the Trump administration supported you, because I remember, keeping you were pretty high profile when you were running. And, I would think that you have interconnections with people in that administration, that you can voice your concern, and you do it, you haphazardly here on TV, putting yourself at great risk, that people that have great power, and you're speaking the truth or attempting to put the truth out there, what you believe is the truth of people. Do you ever make that call where you call on folks that that you've had connections with, to say, hey, what is this? The American people want the truth. Have you done that? And do you get a response to that?
Well, I do it every Saturday from noon to 2 here on the John Fredericks Radio Network, and broadcast across the web. I have communicated with the Trump organization on a couple of things that I felt were very material, particularly in light of Butler, where I felt that the president's safety was at risk. And I have related information that I've learned by studying and reading and talking to people. And so, but they've got their hands full, and I don't think they're sitting up there obsessing about what John Gordon is saying on The Truth every Saturday. But I'm going to continue to do it because I have children and I have grandchildren. And I also, like you yourself, although you've demonstrated your love for our country in a much more significant way than I have. And I want to take the opportunity to both commend you and thank you for what you have done. Shame on me for not having walked away from my education and career to go do the same. But, when I was in high school and college, the draft was not something that you look forward to. I mean, I knew people who went to Vietnam and did not come back, or who went to Vietnam and came back very scarred. And so that was not something that my generation really yearned to do. And then when I was a freshman in college, I had a very high draft number. My brother says I've been lucky all my life. I don't know. I certainly think I'm very grateful to God, our Savior, for everything that he has done for me and allowed me to do. But then, Sam Nunn and the then president, I believe it was Jimmy Carter, or let's see, Carter, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Jimmy Carter did away with the draft. And so my age group, our generation, did a collective sigh of relief that we were not going to have to go and do that. Yet now, with the benefit of hindsight, I look back on my generation: sex, drugs, rock and roll, draft dodgers, hippies, pop festivals. I mean, have we been good parents to our children? I mean, I think my wife and I have, but I don't know that our generation has. And I'm concerned about a generation of entitled people. And I don't know what we did to create that. But I know my wife and I wanted our children to have a better life than we've had. And we've had a damn good life. There's no sour grapes here. I've been so fortunate. And I've also worked my butt off. And I hope that I role model that for my children. But that generation is like, give it to me because I deserve it.
Oh, John, I do appreciate that, because it's like, as I talked to you earlier and I'd mentioned to you in my email, I've been a fan. I've kept my eye on you throughout the years, and I like
You're very kind.
people like
Thank you.
You're welcome, and people like you keep this disparities in our country at a low, because you're able to relieve that tension and say some things that people are sometimes scared to say. And I am one of those people. I'm usually pretty contained in what I say. I'm pretty hard to get a rise out of me when I'm doing my interviews. I've done hundreds of these interviews. I've had extremely right wing, I've had extremely left wing, and people are always trying to get me to come to their point of view. And it's hard to get me to go there, because I was in the military, and they teach you to keep your mouth shut and don't say your opinion, but
like
do what
you're
told.
Down to challenge. Anthony, we got work to do here.
So when I see people like you that put it out there and it's like, man, he's going to get assassinated in the middle of the night talking like that, I say to myself, it's people like you that keep that tension relieved and allow the gap to be bridged because other people are scared to talk like that. Maybe because of their training, maybe because of what they see on TV, but people like you help keep the truth is the name of your show out there. So I'd like you to just ask me anything you want to ask me and I'll loosen up a little bit, John.
I think you're doing just fine. And I appreciate the kind words and I appreciate your coming on with us today, just to give you a little insight into what you're saying. And I don't know, but I'll tell you two things. One, I'm 72, so I don't really care a whole lot. I have a wonderful wife and life and family. I don't want to leave this earth, but I'm prepared to when that day comes. But I also have a huge faith in God, and I just sort of give it over to Him. And I'm doing what I believe in my heart and brain is the right thing to do. And if I pay a price for it, then so be it. The other thing is that I was not a good student in high school. They had to burn the building down to get me out. So maybe I'm just not maybe I'm not very smart. But you are very smart because you've not only written a great selling book, The Spirit of a True Patriot, but you also have followed your passion and have an automobile dealership, actually a pretty specialized one, a Corvette dealership, which is certainly a twist that I haven't heard before.
Yeah, well, John, thanks for mentioning my business. The name of my business is Corvette Warehouse, and we are the largest Corvette dealer in the Southwest and approaching to be the largest Corvette dealer in the country. We're about this close to getting there. We have about 200 Corvettes in stock. When I was a kid, you mentioned those Vietnam veterans a little bit ago, and I was raised by Vietnam vets and by hippies. That my entire upbringing was this war.
You turned out all right.
I did. I've been blessed by the Lord. I had both. I had the hardcore Republican and the hardcore Democrat in my family, and thank God, the good prevailed because I grew up, with hippies in my family. I grew up with 3 Vietnam vets in my family, and my uncle, who came home from Vietnam, he served in the Vietnam era in that time as an accountant. He bought a 1979 Corvette. And when I was about 8 years old, I'm sitting on my grandma's porch step and he pulls up in this 1979 silver on red Corvette coupe. And I was just blown away. And I saw this iconic figure, which was my uncle. Everybody in my family loved this man, respected him, put him on a pedestal. He was such a outgoing, funny, charismatic man that had just done everything right in life. And I saw him get out of this car and it just kept the symbolic effect in my mind what that car meant. And to him, it meant the all-American product line. It meant, freedom. It meant being a patriot. And to him, he was extremely patriotic. So I grew up thinking about this. I immersed myself in learning about Corvettes. And when I was in the military, I traveled everywhere with 3-4 books about how to start a business and how to learn about the Corvette product line. And I learned everything I could about my dream, which is being Corvettes. I planned to do it as a hobby. I never, ever imagined I'd be at this point in my life where I'd have 200 Corvettes to sell. I thought at best I might have 5 or have a few in my garage as I worked in a finance company, which is a degree I got from the U.S. Army. So I expected that I would do this as a hobby, and it turned into something as a career. And I believe now, from looking back at my journey, it was because of my selfless service to my nation that allowed me to have my journey paved. Every time I came across somebody in the civilian world, they gave me the benefit of the doubt. They would always open the door. They would always give me that opportunity. And that's because of my service. I mean, it's just no other way around it, no beating around the bush. And then when I was selling my cars and, doing parts and doing all these things to grow my business, which took over a decade to get it to break even, I was finally came to the realization that people help those that have helped their nation. Like there might be people that come buy a car from us just because of my service, just because they meet me and they say, hey, I'm going to buy a car from you over the competition because of what you've done for your nation. And that to me is extremely humbling. I've never expected to get this far in life. I'm so blessed, that my income has been this way up and down where I make a lot of money, lose a lot of money, make a lot of money, lose a lot of money. We're coming off some of the worst years of my career from the last couple of years of the Biden administration when they were giving away the kitchen sink to other nations and allowing imports to come in. to destroy our nation's trade system. And when Donald Trump took hold around the beginning of the year, our record numbers started coming in. We turned around, we recovered our losses of the last 2 years, and we're on the trajectory for doing awesome things.
Well,
so
good for you.
My story is a story of passion, working hard, working smart, following people that are, ethical, good leaders, and then working the system. And that is following what you do as your passion in life and then taking advantage of it. And I'm surrounded by entrepreneurs every day, people that do what they enjoy. The other day I met a guy at work that he, just happened to run into him, and his wife told me he was a veteran, and she told me that what he did for a career, he was self-employed, and he started telling me he had a charity, Warriors WP, and he's trying to do his part, and then we just connected immediately. He told me about his service in Afghanistan, his challenges with PS, younger kid, he's in his 30s, I'm in my 50s, and we were able to connect. So it's just such a great experience to go to work, and I run into these people every day, self-employed electricians, plumbers, sign companies, people that do their own radio shows, people that do podcasts, people that do YouTube channels. I run into all these kind of people, and it's kind of like just going to have Christmas every day at Corvette Warehouse. So extremely blessed. I write about it in my book, and I believe that all Americans have this opportunity, but you don't have in other countries. When I traveled to Saudi Arabia, Middle East, into Europe, they're so challenged to be able to start a business, to be able to launch something. It's so hard to be able to navigate the systems of these nations, to be able to become an entrepreneur. But in this country, it's the easiest place in the world to start a business. Our country is extremely friendly to entrepreneurial behavior and opportunities, and people don't recognize that. If you look at the Squad and AOC, they talk so bad about our country, and I can sit behind my screen and I am enraged, and I want to just scream out what I'm thinking, because they talk so bad about this nation that gives you so much opportunity. People are fighting and dying to get to this country. People are cheating and lying to get to this country, but yet we talk so bad about this nation that gives us so much. And I hope that my work and my book can put that information out to the younger generation and let you know that this nation is not a bad nation. We are the greatest nation on earth. We only have 3% of the population, but we command 1% of the entire nation's and admiration. We have 99% of the wealth that people around the globe don't have. Our bums, our people that are homeless on the side of the streets that refuse to work, have more wealth and more power than the 99% of the world. They can still dial 911 and get help. They can still call for an ambulance. They can call for police help when they're in trouble. In most nations, you don't have that afforded to you. So I hope my work is able to transition people and give people an ideal that it is temporarily maybe not symmetrical in our country and things are not aligned perfectly, but this is the best nation in the world, and our perspectives need to change in order for this nation to get another 250 years underneath its belt.
So where is the Corvette Warehouse?
Corvette Warehouse is where you mentioned, in Dallas, Texas. It's about 6 to 7 miles from where Kennedy was shot. We're on the same highway that where Kennedy was shot, Highway 35. We're in North Dallas, and the website is CorvetteWarehouse.com. If you need to take a look at the CorvetteWarehouse.com, you can click under Meet the Owner. There's a link to buy the book, and all proceeds from the book go to veterans charities, the 4 charities that you mentioned in the beginning of your show, John.
So when I was a kid, we had my good friend and I, we had this tradition that every year when the automobile companies would come out with their new models in September, his dad would load us all up in the car and we would drive from dealership to dealership looking at the new models. And I remember the very first Corvette when it came out. That shows you how old I am. This was in the 60s. And that car was so bad, man. I tell you, we were just in awe of and it was just really cool. And then we went back a couple of years later, I think, and the headlights actually retracted into the body of the car. That blew us away. It is an iconic car that has really been part of the American automobile story. And you are so fortunate to be able to earn a living, and I think now a pretty good living at it. And that allows you then to fuel your passion, which is to help veterans. What exactly is the theme of the spirit of a true patriot?
The spirit of a true patriot is a call to people that they can actually achieve their dreams in life. And number two, if you're considering service or you have a challenge in life, to be able to navigate these challenges and be successful in it. I came from a family where my mom was making $300 a week cutting meat in a delicatessen. My dad was making $400 a week working at A.L. Smith Welding as making GM frames for trucks back when I was a kid, and they couldn't even make ends meet. There's times when we had to borrow money to make ends meet. You would never expect from that background to be able to navigate that journey, to be able to end up where I'm at today. And again, my life is so great compared to what I've seen around the globe. My life is so great to see what I see in today's youth, where they don't have a sense of empowerment and challenge, and they don't have a sense of wanting to, take that analytical approach to life where say, hey, I can do things that I'm told I can't do. So my story is that I find a way to accomplish adversity in life. And I do this from using strategies and tactics that I learned in the military. I didn't create these things. I didn't develop them. These frameworks that are in the book were taught to me. A lot of these frameworks were given to me by Vietnam veterans. They weren't done on a computer. They weren't done on a cell phone. They weren't done on an iPad. They were done with paper and pen, hard work, grit, sand, getting your feet dirty, getting your hands dirty, getting in there and working, finding yourself, learning what you're passionate about, setting your goals. And when you set your goal and you find a way to lock onto your target, military perspective, you can find your way to navigate that journey and get to the end of the road and accomplish things that you set out to do. If you look back at your life, you might say, how in the world would I have a podcast or the truth and people are going to listen to me around the globe? But man, I knew about you before I even got the email that I was going on your show. And I've seen you on TV in the past. So you would look back at your life and say, you set your goal years ago. You want to put things out there. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make your country a better place. This is your way to contribute. My way to contribute is to let people know they can use tactics and strategies that the military taught me. It teaches everybody when you come along in the military how to work hard, how to set your goals, how to navigate adversity, how to use teamwork to get ahead because you can't do things on your own, how to empower your friends, your family, your community to be able to get things done. Because when you do that and you give it your all, what they call in the military selfless service, people help you along the way. People have lent that helping hand to me my entire career because they know that I'm willing to give it all to you. If I go out into the battlefield with you, I'm going to give it all. I'm going to run into the front of the line. I'm going to do what it needs to get done to save my battle buddy, my sisters, my brothers, those that I serve with. And when people recognize that of you, in my belief, they give you all they have. When I recognize that from somebody, they can have the shirt off my back. They're welcome at my home anytime. I'll give them anything they need, any resource that's available to me when I know that they're a true patriot and that they mean well. And I know that if people read this book and they just learn some of the principles, a couple of the principles, it will help improve your life and whatever aspect of that life that you want to improve.
Well, that is a great mantra to live by, and you certainly are inspiring people by living that kind of a life yourself. A retired Army officer, Captain Douglas Ernest, author, entrepreneur, patriot, and a great guest to have had on The Truth. Thank you so much today for coming on with us. And I hope that we are able to continue to keep in touch. And one more time, the Spirit of a True Patriot, where do we get the book and how do we follow you?
If you go to CorvetteWarehouse.com and you click under Meet the Owner, you'll see the link to the book and the story about the book and a synopsis about what's in that book. And then also you can visit my website at DouglasErnest.com. Just Google search the name. You'll see it everywhere. There's hundreds of links under Douglas Ernest. And you can go ahead and learn a little bit about me, learn a little bit about the Corvette Warehouse, and learn a lot about what's going on in the military today, the past, the present, and understand what you can do to make improvements in your life by buying this book and making changes in your life.
Thank you, Captain Ernest.
Thank you, John.
I enjoyed the conversation. You're a great interview. Come back anytime.
Thank you, John. The pleasure was mine.